We are live.
Oh, there you go.
Whew, here we are. Now, everything should be all right.
Sure.
Whew. We'll let everyone pile in for a second. Uh, Sorry to do this again, Greg, but how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, man. I'm just, you know, slowly taking a little pre-workout so that when we finish with our conversation, I'll be able to go to the gym and uh, see how I feel. It's been about a week actually since I've been in the gym, so I'm pretty excited to get back to it and start working toward progress.
Yeah, that's gonna be nice.
Oh yeah, can't wait to get to it. In fact, when I was in law school, we always had classes we didn't like. My law professor
Oh,
gave me some of the best advice.
yeah,
She said, just lie to yourself. Always tell yourself you can't wait to do what you don't want to do. So even if I can't, even if I like it, even if I don't matter. I always say I can't wait to get to it
yeah.
because sometimes it's good mentally to do it that way.
I mean, that's a good way to look at it. It's a good way to see things. Good outlook on life.
What about you, brother?
Um, well, I'm sort of trying to get into, sort of as you see, get into this new style of content creation, and I'm really excited. And I guess it's like day 4, day 5 of live streaming. I've had a
Nice.
few different days where I've been able to talk to a lot of different people on uh, Twitter, on Discord, on a ton of different platforms,
Sure.
and it's been super cool. So even being able to chat with you now, it's been really cool.
Oh, well, that's dope, bro. I'm glad to, be able to sit here and add to the number. I'm just happy to be here, man.
Um,
Actually.
Here we go.
And look,
So
I'll
we got a
tell you
few.
this too. I've got
Oh, what was that?
I've got thoughts on channel issues or channel stuff, that I've at least noticed talking to content creators that I'll be more than happy to share with you when we're not live. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, So it looks like we got a little bit of the chat coming in. Yeah, so I wanted to introduce Gregory, who was an attorney who actually reached out to me wanting to talk a little bit of crypto and wanted to talk a little bit and get a better understanding of what these networks are, what these cryptocurrencies are used for, how they can be used in terms of being able to generate products and services, and what are people using them for. Hey, Gregory, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, yes. Uh, my name is Greg, and I've reached out to this brother on LinkedIn because I wanted to really get a good, decent. I wanted to get a decent understanding of what crypto was about. I remember being in law school in my last semester. We read a paper about the need um, we read a paper that talked about crypto technology, somewhat blockchain technology, and the need for regulation in that space. But if I'm being honest, because I didn't understand what crypto was or what blockchain technology was or whatever terms you use, I didn't understand it. So I kind of just read to be able to know enough to be able to say that I read it. So that kind of brings me to my question for you: is you know what is crypto currency, and what is blockchain technology, and how might they work together?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. That is like a common question that I see asked a lot in the space where people are like, I see all these tokens, I see all these coins, I see people making money, I see people trading, I see software developers doing some things, I see apps, dApps, contracts, whatever. But what does
Mm,
this all mean, right? And there are a lot of different components. Like some people like to talk about the layer ones and the technical components like the TPS
right.
and the block sizes and stuff like that. Some people like to talk more about um, uh, elements of being able to elements of tokenization. People like to talk about NFTs and marketplaces and dexes and being able to issue
Right.
different assets as NFTs or as tokens. We could talk about different
Hmm.
activities that operate on chain, like people building dApps
Sure.
and those dApps being able to interact with each other, and those dApps being able to process tokens, being able to pass units of account between each other, and sort of a seamless integration between these different applications. But fundamentally speaking, when people reference blockchain technology and cryptocurrency, they're looking at the cryptocurrency
Hmm.
as a neutral form of capital to exchange value with. This is almost analogous to how people
Right.
look at gold. But what's interesting about cryptocurrency is the software is essentially the the means of being able to exchange value is reinforced by the software itself. So it's almost like having all of the attributes of being able to exchange value, but you're using the software to do so rather than using gold or something like that. So people like the idea of being able
Hmm.
to neutral form of value to exchange wealth globally rather than having to use traditional fiat fiat currencies or other forms of value like that. And mostly because the idea is that these software can provide the services of exchanging value better than the current payment terminals do, or the current fiat systems do, or banking systems do. And with that, people sort of extrapolate, well, if you can exchange value with the cryptocurrency anywhere in the world, simply by people being able to engage on these blockchains, what happens when you're able to add on smart contracts and tokenization and different types of assets and applications that can be processed and interacted with all around the world? What type of new like economy are we going to be in that can be more efficient than the current ecosystem that we're residing in, or the current financial system? So this is usually what people are usually referencing is using these software as a means of exchanging value over the internet, as opposed to traditional banks, brokers, fiat currencies, governments, and so on, payment terminals. How's that, Greg?
I love it. I love it. I love the idea of crypto being seen as a software to exchange value. I think that'll open up the eyes for a lot of folks who see crypto techno. I'm sorry, who see crypto as a coin, essentially a dollar, as you said earlier. Um, you know, one of the things I'm starting to notice is that crypto is actually becoming pretty popular, and I'd like to get your view on why is it becoming popular now and why wasn't it popular, when the guy gave 1,500 Bitcoin up to buy Domino's pizza
Yeah,
years
so
ago.
this is actually really interesting. This is actually so it sort of goes into what does growth look like in crypto, and we see a lot of different things. We see a lot of people get excited now because people are making money, so that's obviously a huge driving force. But when Bitcoin first came out, or when these software were first created, there was sort of this element of sure you have these software, but how do you even use them? Especially when you reference the guy who bought the pizza with the Bitcoin. That was like the first transaction of any Bitcoin with anyone. So there was sort of there
Mhm.
was not only is there a time it takes for there's a time it takes for people to start accepting an idea of utilizing a new tool for exchanging value. And with that, you got to remember when people said when Bitcoin first came out, they're like, "What's the point of this? Like, there's internet money, you can move value." And it took time for people to mature these different ideas, and you can actually see how these ideas mature over time. Um, oh, here we go. You can see how a bunch of these different ideas mature over time. Like for instance, people talk about being able to exchange value on chain, and then they talk about being able to build smart contracts that can automate value on chain, and then you talk about tokenization that can issue tokens on chain and then automate those tokens again while they're on chain. Um, and this just allows you to be able to stack more layers of complexity on a technology that allows you to be able to facilitate trade and value. So, like I said, it started with being able to exchange just using some neutral form of capital as a cryptocurrency. Now you
Right.
have autonomous processes,
Exactly.
autonomous systems, wider ecosystems of assets being exchanged, as well as economies being facilitated almost entirely programmatically, where in previous environments you would need them facilitated by different entities like banks.
Now it's interesting because I know that one of the reasons why we talked, as you said, it wasn't popular before, is because of folks not really knowing how to use the tool. use it as a tool to exchange value, which kind of goes back into what we talked about in terms of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. Now, I'd like to go back to that briefly. If we're talking about cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, can you talk about it in terms of native currencies versus blockchain tech?
So, can you elaborate on that a little bit? So, I know, we like to separate. People like to separate like layer ones and layer twos and DApps and tokens. So like, are you sort of like referencing like what's the difference between like the layer one tokens and the services that reside on top of them, like smart contracts,
Cor-
like yeah,
Correct.
uh, NFTs, tokens that may reside
That's
on
correct.
chain. So yeah, actually, fundamentally speaking, the native token is you can almost look at it as fuel for the network. And the reason I say that is in order for any person to be able to make any execution on chain, they need to have so much fuel to pay the gas fee to be able to engage with the network. So what ends up happening is that native cryptocurrency is a token that's needed in order to make any engagement on chain in any regard. This could be a transaction, this could be a smart contract execution, this could be a whatever. You need the native cryptocurrency in order to pay that transaction fee. That's sort of where you could look at the cryptocurrency part. If there's any part of the cryptocurrency that you had to pay with, it's essentially those gas fees to do anything on the network. And the gas fees are sort of dictated by the network. But with most EVM networks, depending on the smart contract you call, the more processing power the smart contract calls, the bigger the gas fee. You see what I mean? So that's
Mm-mm.
fundamentally the main reason why you have the native cryptocurrency. All the other assets and services that reside on top of it are fundamentally just smart contracts that have other components that allow you to do different things. So NFTs are just a smart contract that allow you to facilitate a token, and you're able to automate that token with some code in it. Smart contracts are just smart contracts. That's the thing. Everything else that you reference in terms of that residing on chain are typically some sort of smart contract facilitating some service. Now, people do like to go into like layer twos, especially when they talk to Ethereum or when they're referencing Ethereum. And usually in that regard, these layer twos exist in order to create the layer one, or in order for the layer one to be more to have higher performance. So a lot of layer twos, and there's like a bunch of semantic games that are played on in like what are layer twos, because most layer twos are typically associated with providing performance to the layer one, but then some people will sort of like nebulously reference like smart contracts and dApps as layer twos because they technically operate on chain, but they're
Hmm.
not the same as a layer two. But for the most part, layer twos are systems that operate on chain to add performance to the layer one. But that's essentially the general difference between the native cryptocurrency, layer one, layer two, and the different services that reside on top of them, like tokens and smart contracts.
Nice, nice. So we've got the fuel for the network, right? And you also talked about gas fees.
And
I
and
know
uh,
we
just to
early.
add one tiny thing to the fuel to the network portion,
Sure.
what makes this so interesting is that every single smart contract has the capability of moving the native cryptocurrency. So this is what makes it really cool. So whenever you're trying to engage with multiple parties in multiple jurisdictions with multiple currencies and multiple systems, it's really difficult to get all of those systems and all of those different payment rails all in the same boat. Now, for the most part, like the idea is that if we're able to make engagements in dollars, and most people will do engagements in dollars, we're able to mitigate a lot of those issues. Now, what happens with the smart contracts and the native cryptocurrency, each smart contract has the capability of being able to process and manage value from the native cryptocurrency in that smart contract. So if I had one
Mm,
application that wanted to pay another application, both smart contracts have the capability of utilizing the native cryptocurrency as a payment tool. You see what I mean? And every smart contract's like that. So person A, B, C, and D could have no idea who each other are, and their smart contract can allow each other to pass value between each other without them having to opt into without them having to jump into an individual like fiat currency to do that. Like I said, them operating on the network, that native currency is a tool that can be utilized within all smart contracts to move value.
nice, nice. I love that explanation. I think it was crystal clear, actually. I got more than I wanted, but that's good, right? And I appreciate that with every question. Not only you question, but you're also adding more value and going a little further. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I
of
know that
course.
earlier we were trying to. I know that earlier we were trying to get the streaming issues fixed, and we were doing a Q&A for some of the folks who are watching. and we talked about the evolution. I'm sorry, the evolution of the crypto space. We kind of looked at it in terms of, or at least it was explained, or compared to the cloud, right, in terms of saturation. Um, Now, if we were to look at gas fees, for example, transaction fees, and the evolution of the space, what do you think the role of transaction fees are, and how might they impact adoption of crypto going forward?
So transaction fees, like I stated with the native cryptocurrency, and that being a fee that's executed, that's a fee that's needed for every execution. That fee.
Hmm.
So yeah, so
Hmm.
really what ends up happening is this is actually the fee is kind of insignificant, but sort of significant at the same time. Most for the most part, the fees are really, 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 really cheap. Or even on networks where they're not really cheap, the fees aren't
Nice.
necessarily they're not necessarily the driving force for demand of the network, but at the same time they sort of are the floor of demand for the network. You see what I mean? So what I mean by that is there's a pool of people that regardless of any conditions around the price of the token are going to need the token in order to do X. X would be basically conduct
Right.
any amount of executions on chain that they're doing. So let's say they needed to burn 10 XDC per day to run their application or whatever. Or let's say it just requires 10
Hmm.
XDC to run it, like, whether it's from a bunch of people executing it, from you executing it, whatever it may
Sure.
be, or let's say per month or year, whatever it may be. Well, then as long as your application's running, you're gonna need that much, native cryptocurrency in order to pay those executions in order to operate your application. You see what I mean? So that's sort of like a floor in demand for what the cryptocurrency or what the cryptocurrency would be. Because no matter what, if you want to run a smart contract execution, you want to send crypto, no matter what, you
Hmm.
need some of that cryptocurrency to do to do that. Excuse me, what was the second part of your question? Because I remember you were going into
Well, I was asking how might the transaction fees
yes.
impact the adoption, yeah, of
Yes.
certain
So
cryptos. And the reason I asked, to be fair, and this is no ding on Ethereum or Bitcoin at all, is to say that there was a time where I heard of a transaction going through and it costing a ridiculous amount of money. Um, so that's one
so
of the reasons why I asked about that in terms of the evolution.
So the fees. So right now, everyone always asks that because they're always like, "Oh, look at these fees. They're cheaper. They're cheaper. They're cheaper." And that's always true. Like, there's definitely an element of being able to utilize like cheaper fees. There's also an element of what is it called? Uh, what is it called when like the utility goes down because of what is it for each additional use the
So
utility
you
goes.
wanna prevent
Um,
congestion?
No, no, no. What I was gonna say is, just because the fees get cheaper doesn't necessarily mean that the network becomes that much more valuable. Because the fees, like if the fees one thousandth of a cent, well, how much more valuable is 1/10,000th of a cent fee? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, sure, it's 10 times
Right.
cheaper, but it's like if your application is running on the scale of, and this does matter at scale. The difference between a penny and a hundredth of a penny matters at scale between a million. So
Hmm.
it does matter, but there's an element to at a certain point. What are the other attributes of the network are going to matter more over these different fees that you're trying to account for? Because some people may go, "This is the cheapest ever," but I'm like, if this network doesn't facilitate this type of engagement, or doesn't have these type of contracts, or doesn't have this type of whatever, it doesn't matter how cheap that network is if people can't do X, Y, and Z. Although the network being cheaper is a point to be had on, when comparing it to other technologies. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's going to have that much of an
Right.
effect depending on what type of behavior is being provided on there. People like to throw in the phase Bitcoin how expensive it is, but there's also this idea
Sure.
of if institutions are using Bitcoin on the scale of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, the hundreds of dollars, if
Hmm.
not maybe thousands of dollars of fees
Right.
may not necessarily come up as an issue because it's still relatively cheaper and faster than their traditional systems.
Precisely. Precisely. Um, Now I noticed that you did mention XDC, and I'll tell you, when I first started, kind of looking up cryptocurrency, um, that's one of the names I ran across quite often. The four names I often ran across was XDC, XRP, XLM, HBAR. Those are the four names that I ran across quite a bit. Can you kind of explain for me, and for those listening that are not as sophisticated as a lot of your subscribers, what the differences is in some of these technologies that I mentioned? And if you want me to say them again, I'm more than happy to do
Yeah,
that.
list them again real quick, even though I don't think it really matters, but list them again real quick.
That's fair enough. XDC, XRP, XLM, and HBAR.
Okay. So the big thing and the reason why I say it doesn't really matter is one way that people like to differentiate the technologies is like right down to their like tech specs, like, oh, this technology has this TPS, this technology is EVM, this technology has this many master nodes, this technology is this, and all of these tech specs are interesting and they're important, but only about like 70% of them, maybe 80% of them overlap. So you're really only like having a few niche specs about you that people are sort of differentiating. One of the big differentiators is the activity that's residing on a specific network, and some of the technologies, like the specs around it, could also facilitate that type of activity. So in XDC, we talk about trade finance, and I sort of have a joke where I say, what's trade finance if there's like one partner on the network? That doesn't necessarily mean that you can have, the full scale of trade finance. You need a full body of activity that's being able to facilitate that trade finance. You need people doing X, people doing Y, people doing Z, people doing this, and this entire economy of people engaging with each other is essentially the value point, not necessarily the tech spec that, oh, you could launch this type of contract on here. Cool, that's great.
Right.
But having these types of contracts engage in these ways with other participants, that activity is the value point that is going to separate each network. So each network's going to have certain types of activity that's going to be unique to that network. And people like to sort of like be really generic. You can sort of look at them almost like industries. So people like to look at XRP and go cross-border remittance. People like to look at XCC and go trade finance. People might look at another network and go GameFi. And they may look at some other stuff. Who knows? But the biggest thing is...
Exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. But the biggest thing is that activity that's being facilitated on that network is the thing that makes it different than the other networks.
Okay. That's very good. Do you see, is there any cryptos in particular that you believe will be the first that will be widely adopted and used? Because oftentimes I listen to people talk about, the internet, or not even the internet, but email, for example, right? And they'll say, you send an email, do you ever ask how it get there? You only just care that it's getting there. And, I guess my question is if we're talking about crypto in terms of email, is there any players in particular that you'll see operating in the background that's making society kind of run, or that's playing a big part in how society's going to run, but nobody really knows?
There are a lot of technologies that don't get attention because they don't have like the same sort of hype behind them. I always used to say this for Corda and Hyperledger. Corda and Hyperledger are probably the most widely adopted DLT technologies, but nobody cares because they don't have tokens associated with them. I know Corda has XKD associated with it, but it's not. When it first launched, it didn't have a primary token associated with like price value and all that or whatever. So when it was utilized, it didn't get a lot of attention in that same regard that a lot of other tokens would, because other tokens would see this price appreciation and people would essentially see that as sort of a form of growth.
Sure.
But Hyperledger has no token, and it's probably one of the most widely adopted DLT technologies like to date. There are probably thousands of different companies that use some level of Hyperledger in them, but people don't care because it's not like it's not a token. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean they're utilizing Hyperledger the same way other blockchains are being used. They may be utilizing them in a different capacity, but it's still DLT technology that's being used that sort of gets slept on because people don't have that same hype around the token.
Okay. That's good. That's kind of all my questions. I'm sorry if they were terribly rudimentary.
No, actually, I wanted to ask you some questions too.
Oh, okay, sure. I was about to say, I just didn't. I can only ask what what's in my little head. But go ahead, brother. I'm listening.
So, so when you reached out to me on LinkedIn, I saw that you were an attorney, and I kind of wanted to get your perspective on, and one, I sort of wanted to ask you, like, what type of attorney and sort of what's been your experience, but also what's been your perspective on seeing everything in the crypto space, ranging from the SEC lawsuit with Ripple to people mentioning stuff like ETHgate and, whether things are a security because of an IPO or stuff. I just wanted to get your just perspective on that, just from an outside looking in, just from someone who has a background in law, because I talk to a lot of different people, and just from getting a perspective standpoint, I just want to understand, like, what is this look, just what is your opinion on all of this, in a sense? Just to start with, from an outsider looking in, what is your opinion as an attorney, seeing things like the SEC lawsuit and seeing things quite awry in crypto in terms of like regulation wise and in terms of how people look at it in a sense?
Sure, sure. When you've got the FTX, Chabaco, you've got the situation that happened with Binance recently. It it makes crypto look a little scary if you add the lawsuit against Ripple as well. Um, and I think part of that, and I think also the lack of understanding of crypto as well. Um, that's most of. I think those are the main components that's keeping folks away from crypto. So for me, initially, it was something I was kind of scared to get into. Um, uh, until I actually said, you know what, I'm a, kind of open my mind up, move away from tradition, and see if this thing, because, I was like, look, you can say what you want, but, Bitcoin's going to be whatever it's going to be, and it keeps growing. So there's clearly something there. And my question is, what kind of crypto can you find that's got some similar utility or some type of utility that'll grow at some point as well? So that's when I opened my mind and I said, all right, I'll start looking at stuff. And then the names we talked about earlier, XDC and so on, those are names that came up. One of the things I'm hoping to see with the Ripple settlement potentially is an end to the actual lawsuit itself without an appeal, where you'll finally have some inkling of clarity as it relates to legal. It's concerning a little bit that you've got folks like BlackRock and so on who are asking, or I'm sorry, Coinbase, who are asking for legal clarity. What's security and they're refusing to answer that question
Yep. Yeah.
because they're taking the stance that everything is a security. So you should know there is no non-security. Um, so that's concerning. And it also plagues the idea of, where is the U.S. going to land on this issue? It's quite clear the majority of the world is is choosing to adopt crypto technology. Some folks even taking the advantage of the opportunity to get out ahead of the United States. Um, but we can't ignore the fact that the U.S. is essentially the mecca of money. So, what happens here matters. It does. So I'll also add this. My belief is and again, I'm a criminal attorney, so I don't have any experience in crypto anything. But if they settle this and there's no appeal, then you'll have essentially XRP operating as with the same type of legal clarity as an Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Interesting.
Um, but then again, it'll also serve as a decent foundation as well for folks who are coming after who may want to develop something that's similar to and can use Ripple or XRP, if you will, and its technology as a hedge against potential lawsuits. Another potential is a change in presidency.
Now,
Um, you
one
know,
thing I actually did
go
want
ahead.
to one thing I did want to ask you, since you touched on being a criminal attorney, um, what is your perspective on the amount of fraud and scams and the amount of just blatant, just fraud running rampant in crypto? And do you think that there may be I know that people like to think that like the fraudsters will get their comeuppance, but will there really be any sort of comeuppance having if the fraud isn't big enough, or if the tech isn't understood enough, or I don't know, just from just someone who may sort of potentially even have a client that may be on the other end of this. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think fraud is a ruse, in a sense, and I only say that because I think there's fraud everywhere. There's fraud using regular money. You know, uh, there's fraud using the current base systems that we have. And I think that, they're looking at, what, I'll tell you this, and I don't know if this is popular or not, but it makes you wonder sometimes. You've got the powers out there that be who historically have controlled the means of communication. So, if you control the news and the newspapers, and that's really all we've got to get information, then they get the opportunity to really get in and get rich or take advantage of whatever the opportunity is that's coming, coming, if you will. This is the first time, at least from my understanding in history, that the common man also has a platform that can disseminate some of these newer things that are coming out. Uh, and it's given the common man an opportunity to get ahead and to take advantage of some of these new trends that are coming up, who will also become rich as a result of taking advantage of these new things that are happening. Um, and part of me feels that that the powers that be, who used to control the information, who now no longer have a monopoly on it, right, are trying to do what they can to discourage people um, from engaging in the industry. And one of the tools that's used is the rules of fraud, as if it's particular to crypto. You know what
So
I mean? As if
it's almost like the
crypto's
red
the only
herring. It's
rules.
like, hey, go look at that fraud over here, so you don't look at that fraud over there, so you don't look at that fraud over here, type deals.
Correct. It's one of those things where you've got, Mr. Diamond, who tells his folks, hey, anybody that works for me that gets involved in crypto, I'm gonna fire you. But yet they're developing platforms to facilitate crypto, and it's like, well,
Uh,
I don't know if that's necessarily the same thing. Um, but that's why I said again, it's just one of those things where I just really think it's a ruse, where they're capitalizing on the idea of fraud, right? Which again is everywhere and in every financial system, right? Um, while at the same time capitalizing on the lack of, as you said earlier, folks really not knowing how to use the technology or what it is designed to do or what the case is for crypto. Um, so I think that's their way of kind of taping down expectations and maybe potentially slowing down crypto. Some of these companies slow down enough to be able to catch up so that they can be more competitive.
Now, we've touched on XRP a little bit. What do you think of the? It's sort of the ambiguous clarity around Ethereum in reference to like what is it, the IPO back in, what was it, 2017 or was it 2016? What do you think is going to be in regard what do you think is going to happen in regards to what IPOs may be, and this is just getting your general opinion. I don't know how much you may be familiar with just the whole IPO ICO offerings. But what do you think in regards to what do you think is going to happen in regards to the ambiguous clarity around ICOs and whether they're securities or not? Do you think they're securities?
Well, that's I don't know nothing about that. Let me not even put on my blue cap. I don't know nothing about that, brother.
it's a
But
it's
that
a
was a great
huge
question, though. I mean, you might be able to help me out with that.
it's a huge question in the space of a lot of ICOs are similar to IPOs. The classic notion of let's raise a bunch of money and we'll give out a bunch of
Sure.
these tokens. And the biggest thing is that a lot of them were used as investment vehicles for the enterprise. So a lot of them
Sure.
fell as securities. But you got to also remember some of the first ones were some of the first ever blockchains ever, like Ethereum. So there's this element
Hmm.
of, yeah, sure, there's an aspect of it may have been treated as a security when it first was created, but now it's effectively decentralized to where it may not fall into that bounds anymore. And then people sort of argue that with Bitcoin as well, and it's sort of in this ambiguous notion of, okay, maybe it was a security, but is it effectively one now? And can you make the argument of it's relatively difficult to create a fully decentralized system, so you have to effectively make your way through this awkward period of centralization and sort of being this. This is like the argument in a sense.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I have to be honest, bro. I don't really know enough about that to be able to comment. If you give me a week or two, I could probably figure something out, but I don't know enough about that.
No, it's just there's a lot of interesting topics in crypto that are really interesting. And I think crypto is just one of those things where, since it's on the bounds of a lot of different industries, it's on the bounds of, like, right on the edges of, like,
Sure.
finance and
Right.
technology and
Correct.
trade and identity and
Right.
verification, and it's very,
Right.
like, new, and I think it's sort of challenging a lot of preconceived
That's
ideas
right.
around how you can manage information and primarily manage
Hmm.
rights. I think it is rights and value. I think it's an interesting way that
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
challenges our
Sure.
notions on how to exchange that. And trust. Actually, I
Sure.
think that's a huge element. It almost challenges the notion of what is trust and how can trust be enforced, and how can we have trust be enforced
Sure.
almost programmatically rather than by individuals.
Sure. Sure. And here's the thing. I think that's definitely going to be a debate, conversation. One of the things I think is a strong argument as to why, anybody or most people should give crypto a shot, is the fact that if you look at most of the generations, you can always point to a big event, right, that served as some type of transfer of wealth. Um, when you talk about the baby boomers, they had the industrial stage where, you had all these factories popping up everywhere and everybody had, jobs at the GMC, Ford, all them boys, right? you know, and then if you look at, the Generation X, which is the children of the baby boomers, you know, they had the .com boom, which produced multiple trillion-dollar companies such as Google and Amazon. Um, and then you got to ask yourself, after Generation X, what event can we point to for the millennials?
That's interesting. I actually wanted to read the super chat. Someone asked a really interesting question. I'm not entirely sure
Sure,
how well I can um go into this, but I wanted to see how well I wanted to see what you thought. Someone asked, what's his opinion about setting up a trust to protect our digital asset investments? Now, I'm not a huge like I'm not trying to ask you for investment advice, but I'm trying to ask from a notion of how could these digital assets be treated in reference to something like a trust in comparison to traditional assets, considering these are something sort of unconventional.
well, first you need to get clarity, and I can't give legal advice on that type of stuff.
Yeah, I know that. I know that.
But that's great, though. That's something you should definitely look into potentially, and do your research and see what you come up with. But and then again, that's also a general rule, is that trust could be beneficial to a lot of things in the country, anything that you own almost. So, um, but I will say, as just to finish what I was saying, you know, what happened for the millennials? What was the generation after millennials? Was it Generation Z? Is that what it was called?
Um,
Zillennials or whatever it is? You know, what did they
Zillennials.
get? Yeah,
Um,
the folks after the millennials. That was the folks, I believe, after 1996, somewhere around there.
um, I think it's just Gen Z. Uh,
Okay, let's go with that. Gen Z, right? What did they get? So now you've got millennials, who's a bigger class than the baby boomers, right? Who at that time during their prime owned 36% of the wealth. You've got Generation X that came after them that own roughly somewhere around, I believe, 10% of the country's wealth. You've got millennials who are bigger than baby boomers, right? Who are much larger, obviously, than the X generation, who own less than 3% of the wealth. You know, we don't even want to talk about the Z folks that you talked about. Where's the transition of where's the wealth grab for them? Well, you've got to look at the things that are popular. Is there anything you can think of that's new, right? Uh, that has the potential for that. That makes an argument for crypto.
That's actually a really interesting way to put it, because when you look at other investment vehicles that were a driver of wealth, in like throughout different generations, I think you see different opportunities arise. Like especially when you go all the way back to right before the Great Depression, right when you had the
Hmm.
Roaring Twenties and all of that, and the way people looked
Right,
at investment
right,
vehicles were entirely different, and then drastically
right,
different way of how we looked at different investment vehicles after the Depression. But then there might have been a time where people looked at it owning a home and managing equity in your home as a very great investment vehicle, and
right,
that completely
right,
redefined itself in 2008. And now people look at maybe look at housing in a completely different light than their parents or their grandparents may have. And I think crypto is one of those new evolutions of exactly that, where
sure,
it's a new emerging technology that can be used as a vehicle to grow
right,
wealth solely based on the notion that people can participate, people can participate in an
Mm-hmm.
environment that can grow globally without necessarily having to be like a specific type of entity to do so. And the reason I say that, and it sounds
Right.
weird, is if you wanted to get into investing in startups, you would basically need to be a VC or someone big enough to have enough capital to worth justifying a startup. But crypto is accessible to
Right.
anybody, to where anybody can put any amount of value into any sort of asset that they deemed sufficient of their investment, if you want to put it, or sufficient of their time and energy, and essentially participate in the growth of a given economy. And that's sort of a way you could look at it, is you almost own a piece of these economies and you're participating in this economic
Right.
growth. And if you're able to own a piece of that and be able to benefit from the growth of that economy, people are able to generate wealth by being able to do so. And I think
Sure.
part of that just comes into people being, you see this with early adopters, but somebody, this is sort of the joke with the pizza guy, but somebody had to make the first Bitcoin transaction. Somebody had to,
There you
because
go.
if nobody did it, then nobody would ever do it. And
There
then
you
it would have
go.
never been a thing. It's one of those things where some people need to be the ones to drive it. And anybody can do that in crypto. Where before, like I said, it's
Right.
almost like the liquidity needed to justify an investment into a startup would be ridiculous. You need so much value just to, and that's not even to even
Correct.
justify a real investment. That's just to justify even looking
Right.
at startups. Crypto, like I said, anybody
Right.
can involve, anybody anywhere in the world can involved in participating in these new economies.
Correct. Correct. And it's also, I believe that there was arguments before the credit card was created, that, Marxism was going to win, is that capitalism was over. We had kind of, you've conquered all the land and there's no more land you can buy. Um, you know, and then they created a new method of wealth, which is credit cards, letting folks borrow money. They created 30-year mortgages. Uh, you know, and it was like, you got then the movement of money that was unbelievable. And that's kind of partly in my mind, what makes crypto so fascinating is that, for some cryptos, they're making a use case for, hey, Mr. Chase, let's use XRP or XLM, for example. Oh, well, let's use XRP, for example. That's, hey, Mr. Chase and HSBC and Citi, in order for you to be able to make transactions, overseas, you've got to have a certain amount of money sitting there to guarantee the payment. What that also means is that that's not money in the system that's used to circulate in the system, or money that's used to work for those entities to make more money. That's money that's got to sit there for protection to make sure that folks can withdraw when in fact they want to. And if XRP is making the argument that, well, with the instant liquidity thing, you can free up some of that money that you have to have on hand, that's a strong argument. And it goes back to, what did we achieve when we made mortgages more easily to get hold of, and credit cards? There was a circulation of money situation where it was much easier for money to circulate. And I think crypto is going to make a good argument on that too.
I think that's
and if
brilliant.
in fact that does happen,
Sorry.
go ahead, that's fine.
No, I think that's a brilliant observation. Yeah, because exactly with that, when you look at certain components in the financial system, there's a lot of there's sort of like these gaps where money is sort of frozen for a period of time in order to be able to verify payment and settlement, not just of cash, but of just different assets to be settled, basically anything to be settled.
Sure.
And this is just a ton of money that's just locked up in the system. Imagine if you had that exact same amount of money, but it can constantly move freely, so people can have the capital and move it and be able to utilize it. Because that's the thing, it's not like they don't have the capital. They just don't have the means of utilizing it quickly. So that could actually create a increase of economic growth solely based off the fact that people can do more engagements in a faster amount of time because they have the capital to do so.
Correct. That's exactly right. And that's one of the value propositions that, crypto, does offer, or at least attempt to solve. And I think that'll be very valuable.
Yeah, I think that's it. And that's only like part of it too, because we can even get into the automation component too, where you have all these different entities that are almost relying on a literal person to go verify something. You could potentially have these different organizations and these different softwares be entirely programmatic in terms of how they engage with each other. And not only do you have money not sitting because the process isn't efficient, you have it entirely automated to where you have different systems interacting with each other, and then their means of being able to pass assets and pass value can be entirely programmatic.
Right. That's right. See, this is stuff you know about for sure. And like I said, cryptos is going. It's a as you talked about earlier. You talked about the evolution. It may not be saturated at this point, right? but I think that it will become a common thing to hear about.
I think a
And
perfect
part of the reason,
oh, sorry, my bad.
no, it's fine. Go ahead, brother.
I think a perfect analogy is Facebook. It's a silly example. Imagine right before
Mm,
Facebook trying to explain how big social media and like websites would be, and then they go,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
Friendster and MySpace and all these other freaking. I
Ugh,
don't get it, man.
MySpace.
I don't see it, and it's like, and then I try to tell them it's not saturated yet. There are not enough people that are utilizing it to be able to
Right,
see the type of activity I'm trying to tell you. And then Facebook happens, and you see it in college
right,
campuses. So you see college students engaging with each other online in a way they weren't before, and you see regular people engaging with
right,
each other online in the way they were before.
right.
This engagement is unique to
Mm-hmm,
these other unique to Facebook than these other
mm-hmm.
platforms because there was a certain type of behavior that people thought was engaging, and now that behavior has been replicated on every single new social media platform that has some sort of on some sort of component where users are able to engage with each other, and it's one of those things now
That's
where we're
right.
able to use certain vocabulary for this. We can use social media, influencer.
Right,
We have so many
right,
vocabulary to describe these things, but we wouldn't have described these
right,
things like in 2005. Even though technically, if somebody was online making a video, almost on like on YouTube or something, and
right,
dropped it, it would have been the exact same thing, but we wouldn't have had the words to describe it. It wouldn't have been saturated enough for us to be able to understand what type of what this has as an impact in our whether our society or our economy or whatever it may
right,
be, how we're able to
right,
see it at large as opposed to seeing it in these
right.
individual instances. So and this thing, the same thing with Apple. There were other sort of smartphone sort of devices before Apple came up with the iPhone, but when Apple came up with the
Mm-hmm.
iPhone, they didn't just revolutionize phones, they revolutionized our experience with the internet. Now that we interact with the
They did.
internet through apps as opposed to websites, they created a whole new
Right.
type of interaction with the internet. Now imagine trying to explain Uber to somebody that had a flip phone in 2005. It's like, well, how would you be sitting on the side of a road and be able to order a car or be able to order food to your
Right.
house or be able, and it's like, well, there's a certain type of
Exactly.
engagement that has to be saturated for you to be able to see that. Even when people had
Right.
smartphones, it's still hard for people to see that.
Right.
Now once you saw one
Right.
Uber, well, now the Uber of Uber Eats or the other type of delivery things now very much come to fruition in terms of ideas that can be utilized because these other ideas are now more saturated and people now see them for the value that they're able to hold. But it's one of those things where you don't see it until someone's able to build a service that's able to utilize it very well for people to easily incorporate and be able to use. Like, and that's why I say Facebook, because there are other websites out there, but websites were almost like for nerds. Like, you're gonna go on the internet and interact with somebody, like, what the heck? But Facebook made it for like cool for college people. People were just hanging out with each other, just talking
Yeah.
online, and it
Yeah.
created this engagement
Yeah.
that wasn't able to be facilitated before.
Yeah. And another thing is that I remember when I was younger, you see a flip phone and it changed colors. You thought that was just, oh man, this is a phone, boy. This is different. Be able to change the background color. But years ago, if you would have told folks that you'd have YouTube as a platform creating lots and lots and lots of millionaires,
Mhm.
and this is what it developed into, right? Um, and it's just one of those things where I talked about earlier, where you've got a situation in which the common man can also take advantage of the modes of education, and I think that's part of the reason why it's important for the bigger man, if you will, or the people in power, to spread fear tactics sometimes, um, to make sure that the folks they can keep out, and the folks who are on the fence they can discourage, so that when institutional adoption occurs, some type of regulatory clarity as far as Congress is concerned is passed. Um, you know, they'll be able to get in and get as much of it as possible without having to share without with having to share the least they could that's possible, if
Well,
that's a way of saying it.
I think a good way to also look at it is when you look at a lot of these technologies, there are a lot of different ways to be able to create more efficient processes that are essentially being provided by basically every big organization that we interact with, and these are basically disrupting all of that. You're basically allowing internet nobodies online, basically like me, able to provide services that these giant organizations were the ones that were able to facilitate, and it's an
Right.
upset because for us it allows for regular people to be able to engage in new types of technology, new types of services, and be able to get a better type of user experience or a better type of better type of outcome in terms of like the service service that's being provided, and do it for significantly cheaper than having to go to these giant organizations. People typically like to say this in banking, where there's like the be your own bank or in DeFi and all this, and there's an element of truth to that.
Right.
You could have I know a couple guys that literally just came together, put together a little bit of marketplace, and now they're able to sell a collection of different assets into their marketplace. And actually, they're trying to move over into like commodities. So simply by being able to take an NFT marketplace and being able to move into commodities, they're now being able to take these real world elements and being able to issue them into these digital environments. And it's one of these things where this is being done by regular Joe Blows, just like you, just like me. These aren't giant sophisticated bankers that are creating new marketplaces, that are creating or new swaps or services or derivatives. These are regular people that are able to create these software that can do the exact same service that these giant organizations in prior would. And that's it just comes down to that notion of automation. But that upset, it basically gives everyone else something to gain and basically all these previous organizations something to lose, because as people are able to do things essentially themselves or interact with different software services that can do it either better or do it faster, cheaper, do it more programmatic, or just don't require other intermediaries that people don't trust, there's essentially this notion of, why would I go to these giant organizations when I can essentially utilize these individual, autonomous, these sovereign applications where I don't have to trust anyone. I can trust the notion that the process is the process and the code is going to run as is, and I'm able to facilitate these services with an element of just trust or clarity or whatever. Sorry, I almost can't breathe.
Right. No, I appreciate the perspective you've got on that, man. And like I said, I'm here to learn. I'm pretty new to crypto, but this is I'm just sharing basically some little insight on what I've gathered in the short time that I've been involved or learning about cryptocurrencies. So
that is awesome. Yeah, like, it's just, I think there's so much to be had in this space. I think there's so many interesting things happening. And I kind of want to ask you too, what are your thoughts on when you look in the news and you see Dogecoin and, meme coin to the moon, and like, what are your thoughts when you see when the average person's experience with that, it's really hard to sort of have conversations where you're trying to get at something a little bit deeper because you see so much nonsense in the news. And I know a lot of the news companies do this on purpose. They get the views, they get the attention. Look how silly and stupid everything is. Oh my god. But it's one of those things where I think it acts as a barrier for getting people interested or used to the idea of new technologies emerging, because they see so much nonsense peddled in the media.
Sure. If I understand, you said SHIB and Doge. If I understand them correctly, and I think the SHIB community may be a little mad at me when I say this, but those are more meme coins. And I'm from the school of thought that all publicity is good publicity, even if it's bad. So getting Doge out there, SHIB, and having those moments where it's got the bull market taking off, that helps the crypto community, because it then gets the common man involved, because at that point he simply sees, here's a coin, it's taking off and it's making people rich. Some folks rich are getting folks a few $1,000s. So let me look into this thing called crypto, which then exposes more people to the space. Needless to say, even the FTX, the Binance situation, right? Bad publicity, but it does move the industry forward in some way, in that it put pressure on Congress to say, hey, y'all need to do something about this, because we don't need any more SEC, regulation through enforcement type stuff. Congress needs to step up and do what they need to do to tell folks what's a cryptocurrency, what's not, what's a security, what's not, right? Or the SEC has got to step up and say, this is what it is, and this is what it isn't. So like I said, I have no, in terms of Doge and SHIB leading the way, I have no problem with that, because actually that's part of the way that my uncle got involved in it. he heard about SHIB and Doge, and that created his interest, and that opened the door for me to talk to him about XDC and so on.
It's an interesting perspective. I'm usually not the biggest fan of like meme coins, mostly because I feel like they distract a bit. But you're totally right. They very much act as an intro into, and people totally that's sort of the meme, right? People are in on the joke. Like, yeah, this is sort of silly, but it's sort of one of those things where it's like, what is this? This is sort of like sparking a bit of a curiosity. And actually, one of the funniest things I actually
Sure.
sort of like to say is, when in terms of how people want to utilize these blockchain technologies, you can utilize some of these other technologies that people may not say, oh, utility. You can still show them as proof of concepts for being able to exchange value. So there's still an element of being able to
Sure.
illustrate how the technology can be used, even if not every
Sure.
technology is XRP, not every technology is XDC or whatever. Every new technology may have its role in terms of how people are able to interact with it.
Sure.
And the way I almost like to look at it is, remember when like new smartphone apps came out and you would have like the Taser app and you would have like the I remember like someone had like the beer app where you'd like tilt the phone and like the beer would like come out and stuff. And these were like no
Right.
one ever
Right.
thought these apps were gonna be the next unicorn. No one ever thought this app was gonna be the next Airbnb. But these are cool little quirky apps that got people into new smartphones and got people into, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then when you started seeing more
Right.
sophisticated applications, people were already familiar with the concept and the idea of interacting with these new smartphone apps to where it was a lot more comfortable. Even if that one app just got them, is very simply into the notion of what it's like to interact with smartphone, the app store, all that. I think it's the same sort of thing
Right.
with crypto. As soon as you sort of get into one or two things into crypto, I think it could really open the door. And I'm glad you sort of said that because I've never really thought about it like that, and it actually makes it seem like way more of a good thing than I originally sort of thought. um
Sure. 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 Well, you there still? Hello?
yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, part of it as well is I'll tell you this. When you look at the FTX collapse, there was a lot of folks on Wall Street who were advisors to the president and so on, or presidents in the past, who had heavily invested. And it kind of gives you a little bit of an inkling, like, okay, well, some of these folks are telling us, stay away from it. You better, don't touch crypto. It's dangerous. But then they're investing on the back end. Like, what is it to this thing if they're telling us to stay away from it? But when some fails, we find out that they're invested, So, I think that's part of what it is too, is that, folks are starting to put the clues together. And like I said, again, when you've got the common man that also controls a medium of information, such as YouTube and so on, you'll get some bright folks out there that'll put it together. Say, hey, you know, notice this, notice that, notice that. Don't believe a word they say, right? Whereas in the 30s and the 40s, all you had was a newspaper and, maybe some black and white colored news. They tell you to stay away from it, and that's what you did. You had no contrary information. Or contradicting information. That's a better
Yeah.
way of saying it.
Now, of all the different technologies that you've sort of dove into, which one sort of speaks to you in a sense? Which one do you think that, whether you're following its vision or you think that you like a certain aspect of the technology, or maybe it's something that you've had a good experience with? What technology have you that you really like?
Well, so if I had to the cryptocurrencies that I would probably have the most faith in, um, personally, this is not investment advice. Um, it would probably be XDC, XLM, and XRP, and I put both of those in the same category. In the category because obviously the co-founders. Um, and the technology, I don't know how similar it is, but I believe there's a use case for both of them. Um, those are the three that I'm probably looking at, maybe HBAR. And it's mainly because of that layered technology that folks will be able to build on. Um, I even look at Casper. Well, I don't know much about Casper, so I'll leave that alone. But but yeah, those are the four that I'm probably looking at the hardest. Um, I don't know. Is there any that you're looking at?
Well, I primarily focus on the XTC network. I do like XRP. I think so. This is sort of how I look at a few different technologies that I'm interested in. I think XEC with the focus on trade finance is going to be focusing on tokenization, especially around
Nice.
so you're going to see a lot of different types of tokenization, new types of securities, new type of derivatives, new type of financial instruments, especially around automation. Now, I think XRP is going to be huge
Right.
around forex and stablecoin. I think with how the XRP ledger is a DEX and with the rippling algorithm for routing, the new forex markets might actually reside on the XRP ledger. And I think that's just because of how much it can maximize liquidity with that router. So that's something I've been looking into quite a bit in terms of what types of stablecoins are being listed on
Nice.
XRP. What, and that's like not just the stablecoin as in what type, but like also what fiat denomination stablecoins are being, because there are different types of dollar stablecoins, but then there are different types of different denomination stablecoins, and then there's fiat. Then there's
Mm,
technically, if you want to look at like from a trading perspective, there's arbitrage opportunities. But what's going to happen is those markets that were traditionally these sort of like these forex markets may just reside on networks like XRP because of your ability to be able to exchange into other currencies as quickly. And I think there are other networks that also focus on different components, different components as well. But I think XDC around derivatives and tokenization, and XRP around
right.
forex and stablecoins, I think is going to be the biggest in terms of the biggest impacts.
Right. And that's kind of what my sentiment has been as well. Is that XDC and XRP are going to be major. So, and if you really want me to be honest, I had a dream that both of those were going to be major too. So, I don't know, call it what you want, but it's either I had a dream of somebody that I trust told me that they had a dream about. Well, um, but yeah, those are the ones that I'm invested in at this point, or at least looking to be more invested in. Um, so now let me ask you this: what was the thing that kind of made you get into development in terms of crypto?
Yeah, so funny enough, originally my like main career was in cloud development. That's why I talk so much about cloud in regards and make so many like analogies and metaphors.
Nice.
So I was working on my cloud certificates. I got like 3 different AWS certificates. I was working on a professional one. I worked at this private equity firm, and they had a bunch of different like revenue models. Like 50% of their business was lending to small businesses, and the other 50% was sort of like startups. And this just so happened that at a certain time in, a couple bull runs ago, there was a lot of activity in crypto, and there was this notion of like, what is it? What are we doing? What is all this? And right now, we were in the middle of a tech transfer of taking their old, sort of like this old, their old process for being able to like lend to these businesses. We were updating it to the cloud, but then we were thinking, well, with blockchain and finance, is there a way we can automate it with like smart contracts? Like we were being like super like sort of vague, but like, oh, there's Ethereum and
Sure.
smart contracts. Is there a way we could still provide these services but operate with blockchain and such? So we ended up diving into it, and at first, like I just went down the list. So I would start with Bitcoin and went, oh, okay, cool, and then realized there wasn't so much that. I mean, there's things that you can do with Bitcoin, but then I started looking down all different things that you would look at every other network, and I started looking at the smart contracts with
Right.
Ethereum, started looking at XRP, and started looking at all these different
Sure.
assets. And what was really interesting was. We wanted to look into a lot of these different technologies, but didn't necessarily want to hold a lot of volatility. So we ended up settling on Corda, and looking at a lot of the Corda technology, because we weren't necessarily focusing on the coin. There were just certain technology components that we wanted to utilize, and we thought that'd be
Sure.
useful because we didn't want that volatility from the token. Now we did find XRP really interesting, but this was like right before the lawsuit, right after the lawsuit dropped. Most people were very like hesitant, and this ranged from, was XRP a scam because they're getting sued, to, ooh, I don't want to touch this this regulatory uncertainty because I don't know how this may pan out later on for me. So then there was this notion of like, okay, cool, so we're gonna look at, and there was also like Hyperledger too, but we're mostly focusing on Corda. So for a
Sure.
period of time, I was just focusing on the Corda ecosystem. I did end up, because I personally really liked XRP, I did end up building out a Python SDK for XRP. And then at the time, I was actually building a bot to trade on the XRP ledger directly. And this was at the time where I didn't know if I wanted to get into app development and go like the startup route,
Sure.
or if I wanted to go like the Wall Street quant trader route and get into like algorithmic trading. So I was like dabbling a little bit
Right.
with both, with crypto a bit. And so I dabbled with XRP a bit. I was focusing on Quarter for a little bit. And yeah, that was like my biggest, like my first real intro into crypto. And it was like 6 months where I focused on that for a while, and I ended up going on a YouTube channel talking about it, and went kind of just blew up a little bit.
Oh wow. Wow. That is something. That's a great story.
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah, it's crazy. It's trust me, the whole story is crazy. I might make a specific video about it. It's probably one of the craziest 6 months of my life. Like,
Well, I'll tell you this. Oftentimes, when you hear of people that are very important, it's you usually give interesting stories behind it. So that's I wouldn't be surprised, man. Um, but remember I told you at the beginning of the stream that I was going to have to get to the gym.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, you're gonna hit the gym. Oh, I was gonna
yes.
say,
Look,
right before you
sure.
leave, just give one last little intro to everybody. And I really had to appreciate you coming on. I know it was sort of last minute. You reached out, you're like, hey, I want to talk a little bit. I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm totally down. But if you're down for the stream, and you're like, yeah, so I really appreciate you coming on. And you've been an amazing guest. You've asked some very insightful questions. You've had a lot to add. I hope I hope you like being in the Discord, because I'd like to talk to you again, or maybe we could like chat again in the Discord or something. Very much like to
Sure.
talk to you some more. But yeah, just give yourself a little bit of an intro again before you go out, so everyone can so everyone knows who to thank.
Okay. Well, my name is Greg, and I'm I'm a new at crypto. I'll tell you one of the things that I kind of use, or one of the quotes that I use in my life to, and I'll leave this with you, that I kind of use to kind of guide my life. And one of the things that helped me become an attorney. There's a quote that was by Mr. Gestalt that said that the whole of anything is different than its individual parts. And what that essentially means is that every whole, if you take all of its parts away, each of those individual parts got a name. And when you put all those individual parts together, right, those individual names cease to exist. And now it's called whatever the name of that whole is, right? Um, I come from a bit of a troubled childhood. And that's to say, I had to make the decision early that no matter what calamity I experienced in my life, right? Uh, no matter what I seen that was unhealthy as a child, no matter what I seen that was unhealthy as an adult, right? No matter what I did, I didn't have to be defined by any of those individual things, right? That now make up the whole. Because regardless of what I did in the past, regardless of the stuff that I've been through, the stuff that I've seen, the the problems that I've caused or whatever, when you put it all together, you get the guy you see now, and not necessarily me being defined by those individual things. So, remember, keep going forward, and remember that no matter what happened in your past, you don't have to be defined by those things, because you can still take advantage and control your own future. And I believe finding the technology that you believe in, finding the technology that that you want to support, right? I think that, especially if you hold on to it for a long time, it can help assist with that, taking control of your own future.
That is awesome. That is absolutely amazing. I swear I want to be able to have you come on again. But I very much love the insight you have to bring, the wisdom you have to bring, and I just love that we're able to have these conversations. I'm trying to make this a daily thing, daily live streams. I love
Sure.
being able to interact with the community. Actually, I had some people asking about the community chat. Let me share the Discord. Um, but yeah, it's
Okay.
this is gonna be a thing where and I'm just gonna say this, and I sort of reiterate this every time, but it's important because even new people, I want people to understand this. in my daily life, I interact with a lot of people all the time, whether they're attorneys
Yeah.
like yourself, whether they are institutional investors or like VCs or whatever, whether they are developers, whether they're founders, project managers, whether they're people who are part of other projects, like other projects you hear about in the space. I see this all the time,
Sure.
and I talk to these people all the time, and we have these general conversations on what the space is going to be like, and what they're doing, and what I'm doing, and what's going on, and all
Right.
these things. And I want to be able to create an environment where I can share that with everybody. And I talk about
Right.
these things. I actually primarily use my YouTube channel as a place to, I would go and try out all of these different things and learn about all these different things and talk with all these people. And then I'll talk about my experiences. But I'm like, why don't I just live my experiences on stream so people get a chance of being able to see these things in play? Not
Right.
everyone is like the biggest, banker, whatever. But I do meet people that create really impactful differences in terms of the applications they build, in terms of the project they're a part of, in terms of the people they inspire and the people they impact, in terms of the individual things that they find passionate. There are so many people in the space like this, and all of it is interesting and unique. And it feels like it's sort of like in this thin veil of behind the scenes, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So I try to create this environment where it doesn't necessarily have to. So loved having you on, and I would love having you on again if you're ever free at sometime in the future. Who knows?
Well, thank you so much, Quincy. I appreciate that. You can always reach out to me, and if I'm available, I'm always willing. And like I said again, I appreciate you. Although I didn't know that this was gonna happen before. I appreciate you for sharing your platform with me, and taking the time to get it right so that we could share what our conversation was. I appreciate you for doing that. I think you're a great example of excellence. I think you're a brother that's rumbling, and I think that your future is going to be great for sure.
I really appreciate
And I
that.
don't say
Thank
that
you.
about a lot of folks.
Thank you. No, that really means a lot. I love being able to, and it's funny too, because as much as we're online, when I interact with people online, especially like when it's only through text, like Twitter and stuff, I feel like a lot of the human element is missing. So also being able just to speak to someone and even being able to have people see us speak is just huge, and I really appreciate that, man. I really do, because I think it adds it brings life onto the internet to where the internet was almost feeling sort of like cold and distant and atomized and everyone's sort of in their own thing. I think it can bring some new community, online, and just really have to appreciate everything you have to say.
Okay, well, thank you so much, man. Hey, and I'll inbox you after this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Everyone in the chat's like, let the guy go to the gym. Get your workout in, man. Get your workout in, man.
Hey, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you very, very much.
Appreciate you, man. And we'll be in contact. We'll talk off stream in a bit.
Yes, sir. All right, man.
All right, have a good one. All right. Yeah, so that was great. He was an attorney. He actually reached out to me and he was telling me, he's like, "Hey, I've been interested in crypto. I have this experience." He actually reached out to me on LinkedIn too. It's actually really funny. This should sort of be a meme. I actually shut down most of my DMs on most platforms, but since LinkedIn is more professional, I'm like, whatever, leave them open, and actually get a lot of professional communications, propositions, people saying, "Hey, I'm interested in this, interested in that." And normally I get like spammed in my DMs, but it's interesting on LinkedIn, so I leave them open. And yeah, he was an attorney. He reached out. He had a little bit of experience in crypto. He wanted to learn more. He wanted to understand. We spoke a little bit. I wanted to pick his brain a bit on like just his perspective on the crypto space, which I thought was really interesting actually. I had a few guys on yesterday, but I'm trying to make this more of a consistent thing where maybe every day or every other day I can try to find other people to come on and talk about their experiences, especially people that are very much into the crypto space. Before I've been able to bring on some people that have been interested in crypto, but I know a lot of people that are very much in crypto, building, developing, expanding their projects, and I also want to bring them on as well. So yeah, it was super cool, super cool. I see I have a few super chats in here, so I might do a bit of a Q&A. I think I might do a Q&A after some of them. I'm going to try to. There may be another stream later tonight. So I'm trying to do the day streams, where the day streams are I come on stream and I talk with people and we hang out and we talk about all the different components of where crypto could be the future and where we can see growth. And then the night streams are gonna be super laid back. I'm gonna play some games. I'm gonna hang out with a few people I know in the space. Talk about a lot of things that are going on. Try to get community engagement, so we can probably talk with the community on Discord. Tried doing a little bit of that yesterday. It was super cool. But it'll be a lot bit more laid back and try to get more community engagement in that regard. I'm gonna try to do it later on the night. I just ordered some equipment, so hopefully it gets here. Now with the super chats, I see that someone asked, the financial stability board will determine what crypto will be a part of the new financial system. The clues are in the PDFs. So the financial stability board PDFs, interesting actually. Probably should go check that out to read more about the financial future. Future of the financial system. Interesting. If you what is it? IMDPP. If you have a link, drop it in the chat and I'll pin it so people can check it out. Ha! Bring Dusty BC on. I actually met Dusty at Consensus. Actually, we actually partied together at Consensus. It was super cool. I'd love to have him on. He was super cool guy. Actually, super tall, super tall. But yeah, Dusty's a cool guy. Yeah. Any more Q's and A's? I think I might chill for some Q's and A's a little bit. Actually, I might check. Let's check Twitter. We might be able to hop into Twitter space or something. Who knows? Why not? Let's see. What do we got? Oh, I don't think I have anything interesting. Yeah, I don't see any good spaces. All right. Well, Q&As, I guess. I'll leave it open for Q&As for I'll put 15 minutes. That's cool. Um, Anywho, yeah, it was really cool having him on. And what's today? Saturday. So I'm trying to think out who might I want to reach out to for tomorrow's stream. That'd be a really cool one. If you guys know any projects that are in the XRP XDC space that you'd want to see on my stream, just drop them down below or join the Discord and you can just talk about it in the Discord, or ask for a suggestion in Discord. I know quite a few people in the XRP space, so I thought about like reaching out to like Erie, or reaching out to like the Expector guys or the Genfinity guys like King Solomon. And not even just to like do anything big, but just to have people to come through, talk their opinions, talk, because I talk with these guys all the time, like King Solomon. Like I literally have his number sometimes. We'll like chat, and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool just to sometimes be able to pop in and out and chat with people in the space and sort of share that, because a lot of these chats aren't like super exclusive. It's like, oh yeah, what are you thinking is happening, or what do you think is interesting with this thing that's happening here? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is happening over here, and then did you know this? It's like, oh, I didn't know that. That's cool to know. And just just friendly chats, and it's just cool to have. So yeah, if you have anyone in mind, very much drop down a recommendation. I know quite a few people I can reach out to. I see Kevin Cage. Yeah, Kevin Cage might be one I can reach out to. And it's just to have these cool like down to earth conversations. Like it's not meant to be a debate, or it's not meant to be a, oh, this is the, it's really just a, how can we deconstruct our preconceived notions of crypto in such a manner to where we can open our minds to new ways that these technologies can be adopted. And I don't know all the answers for that. I have an idea of how different ways the software can be used, but when I speak with somebody who may have a different perspective of mine and may essentially use crypto, or may essentially use these technologies in a different way, or essentially have a particular process that they may be trying to facilitate, it's good to be able to see that, because then I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to put it, because I didn't necessarily know about that. Because you work in that field, you're able to draw on all this information and all this knowledge on how crypto can be utilized in that field. So it's really cool. Yo, what happened to Genie? I can hit up Genie. I think I still have him on Twitter. I just haven't. Yeah, that could be cool actually. I really appreciate a lot of the affirmation in the chat. Everyone here is so nice. just saying like really appreciate a lot of stuff you're talking about and bringing people on. I really appreciate that guy too. I really appreciate you guys just coming in and like hanging out with me. Like this is super cool. And actually, this is like sort of easier for me and easier for you. It's actually easier for me to sort of sit here and like live stream and chat with some people and be able to share that than it is for me to do these segmented videos. This live stream is like an hour and 20 minutes. And just for me to put out an hour and 20 minutes worth of like content of videos that are like 10, 20 minutes long would take me so long. Where I really want to just be focusing on the actual engagements, the things that we're talking about, the people we're talking to, the questions that are being asked, and then being able to spread that as much as possible. So it's just cool being able to have you guys on here as well, being able to sort of join me in this journey of self realization, I guess. I see people recommending that some other influencers and some other people in the space have like their own shows. I think someone said like Bags has their own show. Yeah, yeah. Actually, if you tell me to go on his show and you tell him to go on, tell him to bring me on the show, I'm hoping like usually I'll try to reach out to people, but sometimes people are busy, so it could take a while. I'm hoping we could have just enough oomph to I don't know, maybe we can set something up. Um, Yeah. Someone asking any new info going on in the XTC ecosystem. Yeah, I actually dropped a huge bit of news. It's a whole you dropped a whole like milestone document of everything that happened in the past year. I don't know if I can find it. I in my previous live streams, I have the video and the document in my previous live streams. Some of the cool things that are new were it did reference on new regulations in the EU around like tokenizing documents and recognizing documents. There are a few big projects that were focusing on document tokenization and security tokenization that were really big in this past year. So that's been really cool. And we've seen like U.S. Treasuries tokenize on chain with USTY, so that's been really cool. So there's been quite a few things with XCC in the past. Like I said, there's a whole document, so it's hard to list everything, but there's been a lot. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this was actually a really good stream. It was a little wonky. I actually found out what the problem was. It was the dumbest problem. But it was a little wonky at first, but we figured it out. Um, so yeah, any more Q's and A's? This is interesting. So any suggestions for how a non-tech person can build or can get ideas to build dApps or niches to explore for ideas to build on the blockchain? So this is where things are really interesting. I think you could look at where we are in terms of building on blockchain, similar to where we were in building on websites in like 1995. Um, People needed to find a developer, an engineer, to build an entire website, even if the website was relatively simple. So after time progressed, you'd find sites like Wix or Squarespace or websites that help you build websites. And these websites aren't going to help you build the next the next Facebook or whatever, but they're going to help you build the majority of very simple websites that people can engage with. I don't think we have tools like that in blockchain that allow for that simplicity to be able to interact on chain. I do think there's sort of something like that with tokens. So the idea of tokenization, there are tools that are making it easier to tokenize things or issue tokens. But in terms of other general tools that dApps can be used as, I don't think we're seeing that same sort of attention. And that's because I don't think we're at that same level of maturity. Just like when it came to websites, there was a time where, like I said, you may need a whole developer to build a website that showed the recipes that your bakery had or something, right, or whatever. Or now you could use like Squarespace or something for a flyer or whatever. It's a lot easy to do so. So I don't think there are tools like that. Now there are a lot of developer tools. There are tons and tons and tons of developer tools, but these tools stack on top of each other. So as there are more tools that are created, they'll become a lot more user friendly. And then you'll find tools that allow for general blockchain use of different smart contracts. And part of this comes from a library of smart contracts that have been tried and tested, and people able to pair these smart contracts together to add new functionality to their applications. We see this with token standards, but we haven't seen a saturation of just not only token standards, but other types of contract standards that can be utilized by, like I said, average users to build apps. You sort of can, but it's really more of like a developer modding experience than it is like setting up a Wix. Um, wow, I'm really surprised by the amount of engagement. Um, I see some people saying, "How do I become a validator? Where do you go for the XRP ledger exchange?" So, okay, so when it comes to XRP, this is where things are really technical. So to become a validator, you go to the GitHub and you download the validator code, and then you set up that code on a node or on a server, and then that node syncs with the rest of the chain, and now you're able to operate this validator. That is just like sort of technical in a sense. But if you wanted to interact with the XRPL DEX directly, there's a tool called the XRPL Toolkit. And you can use a ledger, you can use a Zoom, you can use these different wallets to interact with the XRP DEX directly. And it's like a website or whatever, right? So you can interact with your wallet directly with that website, and you can interact with the DEX directly. There are other like program tools and like SDKs you can use to interact with the DEX, but for a regular user, you can plug in your ledger, hook up your Zoom, interact with the XRP toolkit, and then start interacting with assets on chain, or even being able to interact with like listing assets. All the tools like escrow, all the tools of the XRP ledger you can do through this little this tool. So that's one thing you could do. When looking for crypto projects, if you're someone new in the space, how would you go about making sure the crypto has credibility? So one thing that you could sort of like spot right away, and this is sort of something that I think Satoshi set the standard for. But if people aren't willing to stick their reputations on the line, I don't think it's worth putting your money on the line to actually engage in those projects. I think it's incredibly suspect that there's so many projects in the space that run anonymously, and they try to play these whole like ideological games of we don't want to be the ones or whatever, we don't want to be persecuted by the whatever. I think it just opens the door for anyone to do anything without any accountability. Now with that being said, now that we gotten the trash out of the way and we get to basically like everybody else, all the other projects, how do you know if this person's peddling this software is better than this person peddling this software? And part of it comes down to you sort of don't. Either you look at other projects that they've been a part of, either you look at the organization that they've been a part of, you look at other things that things that may have been suspicious, like they've been a part of projects that have had other issues, or people have had grievances with other projects that they may have been in. Crypto is such a new ecosystem that literally every day random people all around the world are able to engage in crypto and engage in it in a multitude of different ways. So like this there's no real way to stand credibility outside of basically being able to basically try to be as good faith as possible, as well as trying to measure that level of good faith that you're trying to see extended to people. Now, this just comes down to you even asking questions about, and this comes down to, I would say, when people promote things, why people promote things, and did they benefit like monetarily if they promoted them. I think that's the biggest thing that people seem to like emphasize on in regards to that. But in terms of like credibility, it's hard to really tell. It comes down to how well do you trust the people that you're getting information from, and do they have a pass of whatever that you can reference that with. Other than that, it just comes down to how competent do you believe they are in the blockchain space as a whole. But don't be fooled, because you could still be, oh, look how competent I am, but still take advantage of the ignorance of others. So you still need to be careful of people trying to pose competence and using that to take advantage of ignorance. So yeah, that's the best you're gonna get in that regard, I guess. Um, Does XCC have validators? Well, yeah, XCC has master nodes. So validators don't require you to stake anything to run a validator. A master node on XDC requires you to stake 10 million XDC to run a master node. So yeah, there are master nodes that do validate the network, but they require you to stake to be able to engage in that activity. Um, this stream's actually going really freaking well. I don't want to end it. Actually, everyone here is actually like kind of chilling. We're getting really cool engagement in the chat. Let me check the Discord real quick. I feel like the Discord's getting a lot of wow. Discord's growing a lot. Um, this is awesome. In that case, I was not expecting this to go on this long. Give me, I hate to do this. Give me like 2 seconds. I'm gonna get myself some more water so I don't die of thirst. All right. All right. What other questions do we have in here? Someone's like, "Quincy, take a break and watch UFC." That's funny. Honestly, I should watch some UFC. UFC. Who's fighting right now? Oh my goodness. I hope everyone's having like a happy holidays. It's kind of almost like trippy to think about. Like I almost completely forget that we're in December and Christmas is right around the corner. So happy holidays, everybody. Hope you guys are having a good time with your families. Hopefully. Oh goodness. Someone said, "Can you speak about derivatives in XDC and more?" So when I talk about derivatives on XDC, I'm talking about certain derivative contracts or services being operated programmatically as smart contracts. So we talk about tokenization, but then when you take those tokens and you put them in other financial instruments, those instruments are, it's almost like tokenizing a token, but there's also additional software on top of that that allows you to do a multitude of different things. So the example I like to give is, let's say someone detokenize a commodity, right? And then stuck that commodity in an options contract. Well, that options may be represented as a token for the options, but the management of the contract may be, the service is being managed in the code in the smart contract. So now you're getting these automated options, these essentially automated derivatives based off smart contracts being able to package other tokens and being able to manage them automatically. So I think there's a lot of that and these just stack on top of each other. Each time you tokenize something, you create a new service, you create a new whatever. These things just keep stacking on top of each other. So I think that's one of the biggest things that can be emphasized on XDC. And I say this because it builds its way up. So you see securities, you see commodities, you'll see treasuries, you'll see all these different things build on top, and then you'll see swaps and debt and whatever other services being put on top of it. Exchanges, dexes, whatever. And these almost all they're like all like modules that and as each one encompasses the other one, it's able to automate the process behind it. So like I said, you can have one contract manage a commodity, another contract manage an option. That commodity goes within the option. The option may have a token associated with it, but it also has some code that manages the. And that's the thing, no, that it gets worse than that. So you could take the commodity, put it in an option, put it the option in a future, and and maybe that's just batched with a bunch of other futures. Like, so these things can be incredibly complex on top of each other, just based off how tokens can reside in contracts, and contracts can manage tokens, and contracts themselves can have tokens that manage tokens. So, and this actually isn't unique to XDC. This is the type of behavior that's trying to be facilitated. But technically, any EVM chain, or really any chain with smart contracts, could try to facilitate some level of activity similar to this. This is just something that's being focused on in XDC. Um, I think I'm gonna drop the Discord one more time in the chat. My alarm went off for how long I was gonna leave the stream going. So if there aren't any more questions, I hope everyone has a good day. I might have a night stream a little bit later. Hopefully I can get everything set up. The night streams are gonna be super laid back, chilling, gaming. I do want to collab with people while gaming. I think there's a huge opportunity to be able to just hang out and chill with people that aren't in crypto, while simultaneously being able to explain certain aspects of crypto that aren't as stupid. And I see a lot of that, and I think I get a chance to participate. So hopefully you guys can tune in for that. That's gonna be like the night streams, the late night streams, and those are usually the cool ones. So usually what ends up happening is, and I always saw this, and it's funny, during the day, like I sort of have like my regular daily conversations, but then at night, either I run into like David Schwartz, or I run into like someone big in the space, and I'm like, holy cow, like whether it's on Twitter or whether it's on whatever, even trying to interact with people on Discord, or I end up meeting the most zany, wacky characters as well too. So that's also kind of funny. I was on a stream yesterday, and this guy sort of like, I think he was sort of trolling of it, like in a sense, but he's like accusing me of being an AI, and I sort of flipped that on him because I'm like, oh, if he's gonna troll, then I'm gonna troll. And it was just sort of a funny engagement on Twitter because I'm just like, that's sort of how Twitter is. So yeah, we'll hopefully have more of those. So oh, I really appreciate it. Someone said, "How can I get a quarter of the knowledge you have, bro? It's awesome. It's like listening to music." Hey, look, I just read the documentation. I talk to a lot of people. I actively try to educate myself with things that I'm curious about, and I like to share them. So I'm glad that you think that I have a lot to talk about, because I feel like I have a lot to say. But yeah, I think we're gonna be ending the stream now. I hope everyone's having a good day. Um, we should be hopping on the late night stream later, so that should be fun. And I'll